Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is One Piece Volume 38, part of this 3-in-1, Volume 37, 38, 39. Continuing on the Water 7 arc right here. So this arc, or I should say this volume, is really interesting because it's the beginning of a long-going trope in One Piece of the Straw Hat Pirates essentially chasing someone or running after someone, pursuing someone, or basically running around a lot. One thing you'll notice in One Piece is a lot of arcs have our heroes running around a lot, sometimes back and forth in the same area. But anyway, let's get into this, and before we do that, we got to find out what happened from last issue, don't we? So in the last issue, Frankie was run over by the Puffing Tom, trying to stop the government from executing Tom. And in this issue, we find out what happened to Iceberg, Kokoro, and the rest of Tom's workers. So Frankie ends up on a boat with a bunch of scrap, and he's very, very injured, basically barely alive. And then many years later, when Iceberg is already a successful businessman and running his company Galila, along comes some weirdo dude, and it turns out it's Frankie, still using Cutty Flam. And Iceberg tells him, don't use that name anymore, and I still haven't forgiven you. But despite all the crap he gives him, he still ends up giving him the plans for the Pluton for safekeeping, which, by the way, is basically the great weapon that could destroy the world. And he also expresses his emotions, being very happy that Frankie is still alive. Despite all that's happened, these two are still basically like brothers. We go back to the warehouse, and Frankie's yelling at CP9 as they've essentially captured him. And we learn of Spandam, who was previously shown in the previous volume. He's now running CP9, and he's the mastermind behind this whole epidemic. And we go back to the fire where we last left Polly, Iceberg, and Nami, who are about to get burned to death. And Chopper is able to save them and essentially save the crew while we're at it. We jump into the next issue, and this one, or the next chapter, I should say, and this one's very interesting. So what happens is Usopp tries to stop CP9, gets his ass kicked, and then the guy who originally did the analysis on Mary Go and said this ship is done for, he proceeds to just toss the Mary Go out into the ocean to sink, breaking Usopp's heart in the process. Remember that Usopp left the Straw Hat Pirates, had a big fight with Luffy over this boat, and here CP9 just destroys it right off the bat. What remains of this issue is kind of a sit-down between Iceberg and Nami, and he explains through this flashback scene right here the real reason why Robin left the Straw Hat Pirates. Essentially, the government gave her a choice: either join us and surrender, or we're going to call what is known in the One Piece world as a Buster Call. And a Buster Call is essentially a world government operation where they call in a bunch of admirals and ships all on one target to just destroy a target indiscriminately. And this operation was carried out on her home island, which killed all of her family, all of her friends, all of her neighbors, and everything. So it deeply affected Robin as a character. So when she heard the threat that they would use it against the Straw Hats, who she now considers essentially a family, she decided to give up at that point rather than risk having the Straw Hats, her family, get essentially murdered or killed. Right? So that, and in a way, Iceberg telling Nami that really brings a lot of relief to her, because they now realize that she didn't really betray them, she was trying to save them. So for her, it's all about just finding the strength to go beat these guys, which she knows, hey, if we got Luffy and Zoro, we can do it. And so what occurs next is essentially a search and rescue. The Robin is getting sent to the Puffing Tom, the sea train. And while this is going on, Sanji, who is the cook of the crew, is essentially spying on this whole situation, trying to determine what the best way to go forward. And then Nami and Chopper essentially run throughout the city trying to find Luffy and Zoro wherever they went, right? And get the crew back together so that they can rescue Robin. And the rest of the volume is so Interestingly enough, Luffy gets stuck in between two buildings, and Zoro gets stuck in a chimney. And this is kind of classic Oda humor. He always uses humor to interject within all the seriousness to kind of break up the mood as you go along. A lot of manga, especially the very successful manga, do this. And from the classic Dragon Ball to a lot of the Rumiko Takahashi books, right? And it's done usually very tastefully, is what I'll say about manga. I really do enjoy the humor in One Piece, even if it can be a little ridiculous at times. Oh man, yeah. You notice how I'm flying through this thing because that's kind of the way manga works. Is you kind of fly through pages like nobody's business, especially when you got one of these things going on. But anyhow, while they're going to search and search for Luffy and Zoro, and Nami's trying to stop Robin, the train leaves and Nami's not able to make it in time. But what she finds out is that Sanji has actually already boarded the train, and he leaves a snail, which in the world of One Piece, snails essentially act as like cell phones or radios and whatnot, which is kind of interesting. Oda kind of plays with it, and he dresses up and draws up all the snails in different ways. And you see so Sanji as a character, by the way, the blonde guy with the curly eyebrow, he is notorious in this series for being a ladies' man and being at times a ridiculous ladies' man. This kind of shows it right here with the message that he left for Nami. He's constantly flirting with Nami and Robin, by the way, which adds to the dynamic of the Straw Hat Pirates. So he's on the train and he proceeds to execute his rescue mission. He gets some really... so all the fights on the train are really comedic, is what I'll say. And here you get the usual Sanji kick, this sort of distorted anatomy and perspective that Oda does with Sanji all the time. But anyhow, the remainder of the Straw Hats, Nami and Chopper, continue to try to find Luffy and Zoro, which has taken like many chapters. It takes till the end of this book for them to find Luffy and Zoro. In fact, when she finally finds them, she finds them in the middle of these two buildings, as I showed you before. And then she decides, despite the fact that Agua Laguna is about to hit and basically destroy the lower part of the city, which is this great storm that happens once a year in Water 7. She goes out there to try to save Luffy. And at the same time, in the beginning of the next chapter, Chopper is able to discover Zoro, who looks like a sea anemone sticking out of a chimney. There's like really funny images. Oh, man. So after some screaming around and really Nami kind of refocusing Luffy and say, hey, quit playing around, Robin, she's not a bad person. She didn't betray us. She's trying to save us, but we got to stop her. And this kind of empowers Luffy, and he freaking breaks out of the damn building like Superman. And same thing with Zoro, who's given back his sword, so he's able to slice this chimney down. And they come rushing out and barely make it out of Agua Laguna with the help of Polly. And then what precedes is sort of a bunch of exposition, for the most part, explaining where Puffing Tom is going with Robin. So they're going to a place called Enies Lobby, which is essentially one of the three major world government islands, along with the Navy headquarters and the infamous prison Impel Down. And essentially, if someone is taken to Enies Lobby as a criminal, they're pretty much considered dead in the world of One Piece. So to go out and attempt a rescue mission to save Robin from Enies Lobby is essentially a suicide mission, is what Nami kind of decides is telling them right here. But of course, this is Luffy, and he doesn't care. He's going to go save his comrades, his, what do they say in Japanese, his nakama. So, and Polly and the rest of the Water 7 people are telling him, you guys are freaking crazy, yada yada. And Luffy's about ready to steal a boat up until Kokoro, the train master, basically tells them, you don't have to steal a boat. I'll get you another sea train. but just heads up, you're probably not going to live. And that's when we find out about the second sea train that Tom built, which is Rocketman. While this is going on, we kind of jump back and forth to the train where Sanji's still kicking people's asses. He also manages to rescue Usopp and Frankie, and also manages to trick a bunch of people. But here it is. This is Rocketman. And this train's going to be important because we're going to see it for probably 2 volumes straight. And essentially, it's an experimental train that Tom built early on when he was still trying to perfect the Puffing Tom. And as the text here says, it's a runaway sea train. Essentially, the reason why it never gets used is because it's out of control. Once you turn it on, they can't stop it. Which is going to work fine for Luffy because he's on a one-way mission right here. So Iceberg predicts what they're going to do, gets the train ready, and then you get a lot of really emotional scenes where Frankie's family comes and asks for forgiveness from Luffy because they want to save Frankie, who's been kidnapped by, or I should say captured by the government. And Luffy's like, yeah, let's just go. And out they go, and here comes the chase, essentially, right? So this is the chase, as I was saying, and it's basically decompression that manga does right? Like, there's a lot of these kind of examples throughout many types of manga. Like, another common trope or technique is the tournament, right? So a lot of manga has tournaments, whether probably the most famous being Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, and My Hero Academia. They all have tournaments, right? But what One Piece is doing here is essentially the chase, where they're in a pursuit, or they're chasing after someone, or they're running around a town. But in the meantime, it still takes on the form of shonen manga, where you have fights and one-on-one duels and all kinds of other stuff. It's very decompressed, but they inject a lot of action and a lot of drama into every issue that you kind of don't mind. And the other thing I got to remind you is, I'm running through these chapters, but you got to realize that in Japan, these chapters get put out basically weekly, and at worst bi-week, or like every other week, right? So, when you're reading this, you have to be careful about comparing it to American comics, because American comics come out once a month, if later. Manga comes out weekly, sometimes monthly, but usually weekly, right? Hence the Weekly Shonen Jump. So while it is decompressed, in the time of a month, you basically get the same amount of story as an American comic book. If not, sometimes, honestly, more, especially considering the state of American comic books. But anyhow, so the next chapter, they head off on the Puffing Tom. The Frankie family follows them in their in their basically battle station with these king bulls that are carrying them along. And inside what is determined among all of them, they also find out that members of Galila have also joined them. And what essentially occurs is an alliance, right? All these people, whether it's Polly and Galila going out to go get back at all of those former workers that betrayed them, Luffy trying to rescue Robin, and then the Frankie family trying to rescue Frankie, they all come to agreement that they're going to ally together to take on the world government. Essentially, ultimate suicide mission going on right here. And then while they're at that, they got to conquer this massive wave. And then the last chapter of this volume right here is Sniper King. And all this is really is them breaking through the waterfall with a super duper Kamehameha anime attack that blasts open. Still very exciting and very One Piece for the most part. And meanwhile, back at the train, they're able to get a hold of Sanji on the snail transponder. And they explain to Sanji what's going on, and Luffy gives Sanji the go-ahead to just start kicking ass. And while they're there, Usopp, who's technically not a part of the Straw Hat Pirates, he decides to kind of not help them out and stay where he's at least for now. And then suddenly, 2 pages later, we suddenly see this character, Sniper King, which is honestly just Usopp with a mask on, who's kind of ashamed to kind of face his crewmates after the whole blow up several volumes ago. But anyway, that's it. a lot technically happens, even though story-wise, even though plot-wise, maybe not so much. But this is kind of the mainstay of manga, right? Manga tends to do that. It takes a long time to tell a story, but they make it very enjoyable and exciting while you're doing that. For those of you who are really you don't necessarily like the old school comics, right? And you like that more slow going pace. I would recommend studying manga a lot if you want to do decompression. I think the Japanese have kind of mastered this style of storytelling. You have to get art very quickly. It has to come out on a weekly basis. It has to still be funny, exciting, entertaining while you're kind of slowly telling the story, right? And, more importantly, it's got to be engaging, and you got to really like the characters. So I'm not anti-decompression, even though I bitch about it a lot. I mainly bitch about it because of the format of American comics makes decompression just a killer. But in the case of manga, because you buy it in these big volumes and you read it all at one time, it's pretty solid. Even in its native country of Japan, right, manga is usually published in an anthology called, whether it's the Weekly Shonen Jump, Ultra Jump, or whatever the heck it's called, right? And it's usually this big 500-page phone book with chapters of every single ongoing manga series. There's usually like about 6 or 7 of them in one issue of that, and it comes out every week. So the reality is, yes, it's decompressed, and yes, it takes a long time to tell a story. But even Japan knows that you cannot sell a single floppy that is decompressed. You got to bring it together. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense money-wise, right? It allows you economies of scales when you do things like that. And again, their anthologies are not really what we call anthologies. They're really like essentially taking all of those issues that you see on the comic book shop front and then just combining them all together into one big book that you just pay for, and they just print, hundreds of, if not millions of. Anyhow, I've babbled on long enough. That is One Piece Water 7, Volume 38. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. You got any comments on One Piece Volume 38 or this video? Leave it down below, and I will see you next time.